Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. I'm Andrea. For those of you who are new here, I want to talk a little bit about myself. I make videos giving advice on different subjects relating to self-improvement, just based on my own experiences. I'm currently in grad school and I've learned a lot throughout my life experiences, so I just kind of share as I go along. By no means am I an expert on any of the subjects that I talk about, and my advice might not be perfect, but I know that it might be helpful to someone in some way, so here we go. I'm going to be giving you guys some pieces of life advice that I think everyone would benefit from. I call it pieces of advice, but they're also kind of just lessons that I've learned. I've learned that there's a lot of things in life that you can figure out on your own. And by that I mean you can literally learn anything. I'm sure that a lot of you are already aware of this, but the internet can teach you a lot of things. Well, you actually learn from the internet, but you get what I'm saying. Though getting a 4-year education at a university is also very important, especially depending on what your career goal is. You can learn a lot of skills through the internet without actually having to go to school. You can learn from websites, you can learn from YouTube videos, which I think are usually the most helpful. Maybe you're struggling to find a job, maybe your resume isn't really good, your cover letter isn't good. Well, the internet has a lot of resources that can help you create a better resume, create a better cover letter, and also prepare you for the interview. You can find advice on lots of different websites to help you better prepare for job interviews, and you can also find a community of people who relate with you, who are also nervous, so you kind of don't feel alone. I just don't feel like people take advantage of the internet enough. We spend a lot of time on the internet, but we're not usually doing anything that's beneficial for us. But if we really saw the internet more like a tool for our benefit, we would use it and learn so many things. I always hear a lot of people say, oh, I want to learn a different language, but maybe hiring a tutor is too expensive. I'm sure that on the internet there's some way you can learn a new language that doesn't involve any money or just a little bit of money. The fact that you're able to learn a new language from the comfort of your own home, from your computer, to me is something amazing. From the internet, you can learn basic home repair, you can learn how to play an instrument, you can even learn how to sing. The truth of the matter is that school isn't going to teach you everything that you need to know or that you want to know. We make up excuses as to why we can't learn a certain skill or why we don't have it. But when really on the internet, you can seriously basically learn anything. Something that I think is really cool from developing your skills from the internet is that you kind of learn to be independent and rely on yourself when it comes to building your skills. But yeah, before I move on to the next piece of advice, there's a lot of things in life that you can figure out on your own, so just think about that. So another big lesson that I've learned throughout my life is that feeling bad for yourself does not help in any way. The reality is that life just kind of sucks for everyone, but we should be able to recognize the privileges that we have. And I can guarantee you that one way or another, we all hold some sort of privilege. What a lot of us fail to do in the moments where you're feeling really bad for yourself or you're stuck in a really bad situation, you don't really think about all the great things in your life, all the positives. And these usually actually outweigh all those feelings of self-pity. I can't speak for everyone, but I'm sure there are lots of more things to be grateful for in your life. Yes, it must suck to have to work and go to school and have a social life, all these things. But there's always something to be grateful for, having a roof over your head, having food on the table, being healthy. Just know that there's a lot of people who wish they could be in the position that you are and have those struggles that you think you have. Instead of constantly feeling bad for yourself and doing nothing about it, choose to be grateful, because why not? And if you're really struggling, I think that's definitely a sign that something needs to be fixed there, so you have to think of ways to fix it. So yeah, I just want to say that feeling bad for yourself is honestly just a waste of time. In a lot of cases, I think you also don't want to invalidate your feelings. There's a time and place to feel bad for yourself, I would argue. I'm not saying, oh, you can never feel bad for yourself, but pay attention to how much time you're spending with those negative emotions, because honestly, I can promise you that in a lot of cases, it's not as a big deal as you think it is. So another lesson that I've learned is that it's normal to feel disconnected from your family / friends during certain periods of your life. So for this, I'm going to talk about my situation. I was a person who was very close to my family. I still am, but when I came to grad school, I noticed that I had never been more disconnected to my family than ever before. In my case, there was just a lot of things that I was going through, things that I knew my family just would never understand. So this disconnect with them was honestly inevitable. In grad school, I've acquired so much knowledge on a lot of topics that have resulted in me not seeing eye to eye with my parents on certain topics anymore. And I feel like it sounds like a bad thing, at least that's how it kind of felt to me. But then I kind of came to the conclusion that it really isn't necessarily a bad thing. All it really meant was that I was definitely growing as a person and evolving. I was growing so much beyond what's comfortable and familiar to me. I just want to make it very clear that these moments of disconnect, whether that be with family or friends, like, you shouldn't let them discourage you from living your life for you and from reaching your aspirations. Sometimes these episodes need to happen in order for you to reach your goals, and it does not mean that you love your family any less than you already do. Relationships just change during certain times, and in a lot of these cases, it's when you're growing and living life for you, which can feel a little weird. So I feel like that's why a lot of us struggle with the feeling. But yeah. Okay, so my next lesson is one that I feel like not a lot of people talk about enough, is that it's important to bond with others over values, career interests, and passions. I think for the majority of us, a lot of our close friends tend to be people that we bonded with over similar backgrounds or similar experiences, which is awesome. But I do think we need to go out of our way to make friends beyond our comfort zone. And somebody might say, well, why do you always have to go out of your comfort zone? Last time I checked, going out of your comfort zone only resulted in good things. So that's all I have to say. When you try to make friends based, for example, on career interests, this can be really beneficial. You find somebody who shares the same goals as you, who likes the same things, and they can possibly help you attain that job that you want. I guess my main point here is try to challenge yourself to make friends with people who might not have the same experiences as you do, because you might be really surprised by how well you connect. Okay, so this next piece of advice is a really big one. Take advice from people you respect seriously. It's important that when somebody you respect is giving you advice, that you actually take it pretty seriously. The fact that we can have somebody tell us ahead of time, hey, avoid this, so that you don't have to go through it, I think is pretty amazing. But a lot of us don't take advantage of it. When people are giving us advice, they're trying to prevent us from going through a hardship because they already know how it was, right? So they're giving us an insider, but even then we're like, oh no, we still don't listen to it. And I think a lot of people say, I might have said this too, like, you have to go through the experience to learn the lesson. And yeah, I think that is true. But you also don't want to spend your life just learning a bunch of lessons. You gotta learn to work smarter, not harder. So if someone's telling you, hey, don't do this because this can happen, or I already went through this, so don't do this. Like, if it's somebody that you respect and you know, like, you can trust them and they're really important to you, I would take their advice pretty seriously. There's just so many hardships that you can avoid from simply just listening. I know my parents warned me so many times about a lot of things, and all I have to say is that they were always right. Okay, so the next thing that I'm about to say is also really, really important. I feel like everything I'm saying is really important, but this one is really important. My piece of advice is develop your conversation skills. I would strongly argue that being able to hold a good conversation is definitely a skill. So if it's a skill, it's definitely something that can be learned and practiced. Just because you weren't born being amazing at conversing with others doesn't mean you can't get there. And if we're being honest, a lot of people who have some really cool jobs got these jobs through networking, which ultimately involved some sort of conversation. Whether we like it or not, our lives consist of interacting with other people. You're always going to be in this position where you have to have uncomfortable conversations with people, especially if you want to succeed. Like, this might mean that you have to talk to some really important person and the conversation might be a little awkward or uncomfortable. But if you get better at conversing, these conversations won't feel as intimidating. Being able to just speak effectively, like, is really helpful, because let's say you have a job interview, your resume can be amazing, you can be more than qualified for the job and everything, but if you're not able to hold a good conversation with that person who's interviewing you, like, it's very likely that you might not get the job. Even though you had all these qualifications, you worked so hard, you have all the skills, you might still not get the job. And it ultimately just came down to you not being able to hold a good conversation, which sounds kind of ridiculous, and it shouldn't be that way, but it is. So to lower the risk of that happening, practice your speaking, your public speaking. Just to kind of sum this up with conversations, like, they're super important in basically all aspects of your life, and also they're really important when it comes to connecting with other people and the relationships that you have in your life. Some people might argue that because everything seems to be transitioning online, that having good public speaking skills or being able to converse with others just isn't as important anymore. But I don't care what anyone says. I think that in-person conversations will always pay off the most and just have the most reward. So my last piece of advice is don't listen to your brain. Ideally, we should be able to trust our brains, but unfortunately, this is not the case. Our brains instinctively think that they're right, even when we have evidence to prove it wrong, which is really funny. Not to be too deep, but sometimes our brains will tell us, like, you're unworthy, and you know you're most definitely worthy. Or your brain might tell you, oh, you're super lazy, but you know you're not lazy. You know you're out there working and going to school, so you're definitely not lazy. So why does your brain tell you these lies? Our brains also love to just like make stuff up for some reason, especially when we have nothing to think about. For instance, you might be in a relationship with someone, things are going great, but then maybe one day you're just laying on your bed and your brain tells you, actually, your partner doesn't like you anymore. And there's no reason you should be having these thoughts, but your brain just comes up with it. And the worst part is that you start believing it. I also think that in a lot of ways, our brains kind of negatively dictate our actions. Maybe there's something really cool that you want to do that's out of your comfort zone, but your brain tells you, like, no, you're not capable of it. So then you just don't go do it. Or maybe you really want to go to the gym, but your brain's like, no, don't go. So then you don't go, right? Even though you know it would be good for you. You would think your brain knows better, but it doesn't. Our brains were designed for a very different environment than the one we live in today. And because of its design, we need to be really careful in terms of how much we let it influence our decisions, because in a lot of ways, it can be really damaging. Our brain usually likes what's familiar to us and not always necessarily what's the best for us. That's all I have for this video. Thank you guys for watching. I know I can ramble a little bit, but I hope it was helpful. Bye.